Good afternoon. It is Thursday, and we are doing 52 Weeks of Design Live. And I'm Alexa Hampton, and today we are going to chat with Stephen Drucker, who I haven't seen. Gosh, I haven't seen so many people in so long. And I can't wait. Hello, in Texas. There you are. You're a little dark, my love.
Oh,
Hi.
I'm completely covered over with all the people joining this.
If
I
you
can barely.
push them down with your finger, you should be able to see yourself better.
There they go.
There you go. And when the saved video, that won't be
Too dark.
happening.
Is this dark or is this moody?
It's a it's a little
Atmospheric.
dark. I feel like I can't see the lower half of your face, and it makes me sad.
Let's try this.
Hi. Well,
Still
hello.
dark.
Oh, wait.
Why?
And
Why am I so dark?
you've also bracketed yourself with amazing things.
I'm trying. I did this for you. That's why I'm trying to stay in this room. Let's try a couple more positions here. No, that's only darker. We may have to move rooms.
Or just face a window.
I am facing a window.
Okay, good. Now I can see you.
This works?
Yeah. Hello, beautiful.
You can see a little bit of fabric back here. Okay, you have to spend the first 10 minutes of any live interview talking about whether you can hear me or not.
I can hear you.
Good.
And I assume that my speaking voice is so loud that even if we had no actual internet connection, you'd be able to hear
I could hear you.
Everybody can hear me.
I think it's very telling that both of us have the same backgrounds today.
Isn't it? Ebonized? Is yours ebonized?
No, it's dreaded brown wood with a
I love brown wood.
with a pink painted interior. Well, I live at the only beach house. For those of you out there who don't know where I live in East Hampton. I live in the only beach house filled with Georgian furniture.
Mm. Yum, 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 yum. Me like it.
Well, I did this entirely so I could spend an hour with you.
Okay, good. How has your COVID life been?
Mine, since I don't have to be anywhere or do anything, it's been very easy. My schedule is so flexible.
Big traveler, and you're usually everywhere doing everything. So,
well, that's been a disappointment. But I just watch television. You go around the world on television now. I just watch Scandinavian, crime procedurals.
Nordic noir. I'm in.
I'm also really into the Stasi.
Which one are you watching?
Which Stasi?
Yeah.
Oh, Weissensee Saga, The Same Sky, Deutschland 83, 86, 89. Can't get enough of them.
Did you watch Berlin, Babylon?
Oh, of course. Of course. Did you watch Bauhaus?
No.
Everybody needs to watch Bauhaus. Bauhaus
is Gropius played by a hottie?
Yeah. Well, it's all of them. Theo von Duisburg. They're all in it. And you can get it through Amazon. And it is the most incredible depiction of the 1920s in Berlin visually I have ever seen. It's actually a very interesting, it's the story of one of the first women at the Bauhaus. It's a true story. And this is before they were in the International Style building in Dessau. So it's really about her miserable life where she wanted to study design and they only wanted her to learn weaving.
Yeah, well, it's a thing. I would be especially interested to see that, given how much everyone is saying that on the heels of what the globe has just gone through, that we anticipate a roaring 20s emergence. It'd be good to check in and see that, and then see if there are any indicators in the air.
Well, I'm all for the roaring 20s. I'm not so hot on repeating Weimar Germany.
No, not so hot. Not so excited. Yeah.
Not so excited about that.
Yes, and I had to explain to my kids who made some mention of the Roaring Twenties that they had heard this as well, and I was like, "Did anyone tell you what preceded it?" Like, that was a
And
bummer.
also, we look at World War II, we see great hair, we see great music. They didn't know how it was going to turn out. It wasn't nearly as much fun for them.
I don't think of World War II as great hair and great music.
You don't.
No. What are you
Well,
thinking?
you didn't like swing?
Oh, I did love swing. Oh, so
Yeah.
okay. Well, World War
Big band?
II transports me to Europe. When I think World War II, I'm not thinking of it through the American lens. Let's stop for a minute.
And
Hello,
go back and talk
Stephen
about design.
Drucker. um, where are you from originally, and how did you get into this crazy world of ours?
Like most careers, it was accidental.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in New York City, born in the Bronx, a true New York boy. Um, and um, I always wanted to be an architect. So I went to architecture school for a couple of semesters and realized I didn't want to be an architect and switched to the preservation school at Columbia. And I
And
was in
were you
one of the
always
first,
amazing students?
excuse me?
Were you? Oh, you went to Bronx Science.
I went to Bronx Science. Yeah. Oh, please.
You were always a brilliant student.
D- n-
I mean, I know you can't say that about yourself. You were a very good student, yes?
I was a good student, but when you go to Bronx Science, everybody's a good student. That's where you really get your come up.
Yeah.
You get
Well,
humbled very quickly at Bronx Science.
but you also learn, presumably, how to function, how to be a high functioning person in a high functioning community.
I learned things I don't even I don't even know how I learned them when I look back at it.
Yeah.
Took 2 years of calculus before we were out of high school.
The friends of mine who have been to Bronx Science are amazing, and I have one friend who was a graduate of it, and his daughter has just left there and gone to St. Andrews. The people that it turns out.
It's an amazing school, and our friend William Lee went there.
I did not know that until I just saw his comment.
Yeah.
William, to me, seems like he came out of the universe fully formed out of a film director's head.
I wish we'd been there at the same time. We would have been best friends. So
you went to Columbia, which is.
So I went to Columbia for the master's program in historic preservation, and it was one of the first years of that program. And this was we're talking about the 1970s. So preservation was a really new thing. Grand Central Terminal had just been saved. The Rouse Company had just redeveloped Boston Harbor. It was really a new idea. And when we graduated, the head of our program said, "There are no jobs for any of you. All of you."
But I was going to say, were you thinking that you were taking it to?
Well, it was the 70s. It was the 70s. Nobody was thinking. You were just doing what you felt like doing, and everything would turn out all right.
And who you felt like doing.
Exactly. Exactly. So he told us, all of you are going to go out into the world and do something different. One of you will be a lawyer. One of you will be a real estate developer. One of you will be a journalist. And I decided I'll be the journalist.
Yeah.
So I went to Condé Nast and interviewed at
Straight
House.
school?
This was right after school. I went to Condé Nast, passed the typing test, was interviewed by someone at House and Garden who was a fervent preservationist, Elaine Green, and
love Elaine.
And she hired me.
Smart Elaine.
Long time ago.
Yeah, straight out of school. That's impressive. Yeah.
And then once you go down the chute with a career, that's it.
You've never done anything else.
No.
But it's your DNA.
It was so easy. Once you got into it, there were so many jobs. It was such an exciting career. I mean, I really had the best of the magazine world. Yeah. It was like the magazines in the 1970s were like advertising in the Mad Men era, 10 years earlier. So it was really their pinnacle.
Thriving. Something and thriving. So were your parents interested in architecture and design, and had you grown up exposed to it?
I oh my gosh, I've been looking at real estate ads since I was about 7 years old. It's just been going on forever. I used to draw buildings. I used to copy buildings all the time when I was a kid. Who knows where these things come from? You
Yeah.
have children. You know better than anyone.
Yeah, but I can easily be like, yeah, I was drinking the Kool-Aid.
I have no idea where it came from.
Yeah. So I guess that's your way of saying no. Your parents were not in.
No, they were not. No, they were not particularly.
Did they find you to be an oddity?
Totally.
Yeah.
And also, I was a very late in life child, so they'd already been through 2 children, and I came along 11 years later. So.
Oh, so you've got you've got many parents in your.
Oh, my brother and my sister were like a second set of parents.
Yeah.
So.
And I find obviously only children are famous for being conversant and adult very young.
Oh, I was totally on my own as a child.
Yeah. So that I can see that.
But one thing that is sort of interesting is when I was a kid, the 1964 World's Fair happened, and I can't tell you what a formative experience this was. Can you imagine a 10-year-old boy
in Flushing?
Yeah. Can you imagine a 10-year-old boy at the 1964 World's Fair living in New York City? It was the most exciting thing imaginable. So I felt
imagine anything about it. It's so I've only ever seen it as an archaeological artifact.
I was there week 1. I went so many times. You can't imagine. And from there, I got interested in Brasilia and all the other exciting stuff that was happening then.
Yeah.
So I've always been interested in design. I just discovered I had no actual talent for it.
I'm not sure about that, but I like that story. Entertaining. Thank you.
There are too many architects. There should be fewer architects.
Right, but I don't think you can be an editor of your caliber and a lover of things of beauty. I think it's a disconnect to suggest that you could even do your job if you didn't have the gene, the eye, the ability, but that's just my opinion.
I might have some sympathy, but I cannot do what you do. And that's why I am so in awe of interior designers. Interior designers have been trivialized forever in popular culture. Interior designers are amazing people with a really rare set of skills. And, to be able to walk into a blank room, see it finished, and then put it all together, all the pieces together, and know how it will come out. That's as much of a talent as painting a watercolor or anything. I mean, it's an amazing talent.
Well,
I'm truly in awe of interior designers because I can't do what you do. And what I see in design now is, people buying a piece of furniture, being able to pick a nice piece of furniture is not the same as being an interior designer.
Sure. Like home chef and executive chef. Okay, so all of your editorships or of the magazines at which you worked, what are they all?
So many. House and Garden. Self magazine when it started. If you can believe that.
You can't tell because my Botox is finally kicked in, but I was raising my eyebrows. In my head, that's what was happening. Here I
was at Self during the Flashdance era when it all happened. Off the shoulder sweats and leggings.
I remember going to 86th Street and seeing it over and over and over again.
Yep. And then I went to Vogue. I was there for a few years.
And were you focusing on fashion or interiors?
I was in the features department, and Barbara Plum was the interiors
What
editor.
does that mean? The futures?
Features.
Oh, features. Okay,
Not
that I understand.
no. No, it was very separate. The fashion and the features people. But it really was like Funny Face, is all I can say. This was the Grace Mirabella years, and it was just like that. And I had some crazy experiences there.
Good.
I once spent 3 weeks in Africa on a photo shoot with Sheila Metzner and Kim Basinger.
Wow.
And Polly Mellon. It was.
God, I feel like I've seen those pictures, and that's
You
maybe
probably.
where Kim got her love of animals, and then
Exactly. I'm sure it was in your house when you were growing up, and
sure.
But Vogue was amazing because I got to meet. Every great. It was the tail end of a world of photographers like Horst and Irving Penn, and I got to work with them all and see them in action. Yeah. So that was extraordinary.
Amazing.
So then I went to the New York Times, and I was the editor of they brought me in to edit the home section, the Thursday home section, and I did that for years. I was going to call 4 or 5. I thought I was going to call my memoir 10,000 Thursdays.
That's also a good name for a band. Should you ever pick up an instrument?
Yeah. And that was really like the best job I ever had, I think.
So was there, okay, so I want to know why, and I also want to know what's the difference between working for the Times, like for a paper as opposed to a monthly?
Oh, it's completely different. At a magazine, you're creating the news. You're deciding what the trend is. You're deciding what to push forward. You're shaping the world that you're reporting on. In newspapers, you're trained, try not to shape it, to try to report on it, try to observe and tell people what you're seeing is happening. It's very different.
Very different.
And also in a magazine, everything has to be beautiful and idealized. And in a newspaper, you can be as real as you want to be and say, but this is the way it is.
So you prefer that, clearly, because you said that's the best job.
Well, and also the biggest difference is, doing a national magazine is an incredibly hard thing because, a person on the Upper Peninsula of Michigan doesn't want the same house as the person in Scottsdale, Arizona. Mm-hmm. And you have to find something that appeals to all these people.
Yeah.
But when you work for the New York Times, I always remember getting on the subway every Thursday morning and seeing everyone reading the newspaper. Yeah. And I knew all of those people. I understood them. I understood what they were interested in. It was so thrilling to know my audience.
Do you still know those people?
You mean at the New York Times?
No, I mean, finger on the pulse, know those people.
Oh.
You're not seeing them on the subway, but do you get where it's gone, who everybody is? Where we are?
I'm a real believer in that. I had my turn, and now it's someone else's turn, and I kind of moved on from it, and because I'm a journalist, I really believe in the next and the new, and never looking back. Diana Vreeland said, "I loathe nostalgia," and I actually do loathe nostalgia. I really love to look forward.
I think that is also like David Bowie was very like that. I can't tell it. How do you differentiate nostalgia from history and historical influence?
I think nostalgia is just
treacly.
It's just more sentiment, and
okay.
the idea that things were better. Things were better in the past. The other thing Diana Vreeland said, I thought this is the most brilliant thing she ever said, was everybody makes the mistake of thinking they were born too late. And, so many people say, oh, I wish I'd lived through the 60s. I wish I'd lived through the 20s. I wish I'd lived through the 30s. No, you
Nobody says that about the 30s.
don't. Well, really, the 30s were not a lot of fun.
Yeah, yeah.
But if all you do is watch old movies, you might think that everyone was in a tuxedo going to a nightclub all the time. So uh, I I will say I don't really get where decorating is right now. It's not what interests me particularly.
Okay, well,
But
before we go there, finish up the lineup. So
okay,
it's House and Garden, Self,
New York
uh,
Times.
Vogue, New York Times.
Then I started the Sunday style section of the New York Times.
Uh-huh. You inaugurated that?
Yes,
Oh my God, that's so
Adam Moss.
cool.
Adam Moss and I created it, and then I was the first editor.
Wow. I know you're like, why don't you know that, bitch?
How would you know it? Nobody's name is on their section at the New York Times.
That's fabulous.
So I did that. Then I went to Martha Stewart,
Uh-huh.
and I was there for about 6 years. I was like getting my MBA. That was the most amazing.
You must have.
Was the most amazing 5, 6 years of my life. Not the easiest, but the most
Right, right.
truly a once in a lifetime experience in every way. And then I went to House Beautiful. I was there until I was asked to take over Town and Country, which I did. And I did that for a year. And after a year, I decided this is not what I want to be doing. And I decided to hang it up and leave.
Yeah. And since then, you have been writing books or editing books, both.
I have been working occasionally with Vendome Press. I've done 2 books for them. I have 2 more books that are coming.
So
Sort of an acquisitions editor. If I see something, I will bring it to them.
which is so fun.
It is fun. It's sort of like Jackie Onassis back at, was it
My father's.
Scribner's? Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
No, it wasn't.
I can't remember what
Random House.
was Random House. Yeah.
Yeah, what a lineup. And for the people who don't know that you are the editor of the I have it right here. The 100, but what's the
Oh, the inspired design, the 100 most important interior designers of the past 100 years. So
which everybody I'm sure has, and you probably didn't know that Stephen is responsible for its inception. And you and I actually have another crossover there because Jennifer Bowles, you and I were sitting in the Hearst dining room, and I told you about Jennifer Bowles's Peak of Chic. And yeah, and I also remember that day you said, we were talking about Caroline Rome, and you said her taste is pitch perfect. And it really stuck in my head because, of course, first of all, it's correct. But I love that description. And I've taken it with me in my head. What a wonderful, when something's just right, when someone's just right all the time.
And so many different talents.
So many, total polymath. And then you and I, so this is the hilarious thing that I have to now eat my words. We were at a Benjamin Moore symposium, and it was you and I and other people, and we're talking about, maybe it was just you and I. And you said, you were sitting there wearing a purple tie, and you said, somebody said, what's your least favorite color to me? And I said, purple. And of course, now every room I touch has purple in it.
I remember that moment.
Oh, well, I remember saying that, and then looking at you being like, did I just offend him because he's wearing a purple tie? We had taken a train to it.
Well, what you wear and what you decorate with are very different things.
Oh, totally. So, I mean, I didn't take it personally. Yeah, but it was so funny because I think I was trying to be grown up and have a grown up response, and now I've regressed to my, like when you try to make a hybrid flower, mm-hmm. And I was trying to be something, and then I reverted to my natural impulse, which is purple craze.
Well, Billy Baldwin said no color is ever wrong. And I think the older you get, the more you sort of realize that.
Yeah. Yeah. Or, yeah, and the more familiar you are.
Actually,
So,
with your father had a great phrase once. He said he didn't understand people with this incredibly refined sense of hate.
yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that always stuck in my head as an amazing uh, check on yourself when you start hurling your opinions around.
Yeah. Though, of course, I got the I don't like purple from him. And now when I work with the Kravitz, Scott Kravitz actively resists anything I show him that's purple, and he attributes it to my father, his reluctance. He's like, I'm sorry, I just can't. So around it goes.
Yet your father came up as a David Hicks acolyte.
Absolutely. And I mean, and David Hicks. David Hicks is David Hicks.
Yeah, but he must have had some tolerance for purple if he was around
Yeah,
David Hicks.
no, and we grew up in a like shocking pink and orange textile house when we were younger. But yeah, David Hicks is not measured by the same yardstick as a star. So you were saying after now having made, like you have all of these bona fides, and now having established that for anyone watching this who doesn't know you, now you may continue saying you have no idea what's going on in the world of design. So what do you mean by that?
It's well, I think what's going on in the world of design is a little like what's going on in the fashion world.
What is going on?
Well, exactly.
No, but I'm of an age that I'm less concerned.
Well, the voices that used to tell us what to like and which way to move and shift aren't as strong as they used to be. The basic message out there is do what you feel like doing, and it'll be okay. And then you add to that, everything has become very much more casual, and then you add to that that fashion. The fashion world started speaking more to each other than to the consumer.
Mm-hmm.
And I think some of that
is opposite of what you were doing when you were thinking about how am I going to appeal to Michigan and then Connecticut.
Well, it's natural to want to keep it interesting and impress your peers. Mm-hmm. So a lot of that is happening, and then Instagram has changed what we like, because what we like is what's photogenic. And what's photogenic isn't always interior design, even though it looks like a room. I should be...
That's interesting because, was that not what magazines were doing? Weren't they producing photogenic images of houses? There
actually was an awareness of design. There were always things thrown in to be provocative. But, for example, I was on Instagram a couple of weeks ago, and I saw a room in Paris, and it had like 2 billion likes on it. And I couldn't resist. I just had to leave the comment, this isn't design. This is a mattress on the floor with a vase next to it.
What a crap.
Well, it was the truth.
Yeah,
it was the truth.
If that's what it was, then yeah.
It wasn't. And a lot of what you see, there's a difference between a great photograph and a great room. Interior design is a matrix of beauty and function, and there's such an emphasis on the photograph now,
and on stagecraft.
Exactly, and that's exciting and it's entertaining and I appreciate it, but people do take it literally. So
the trend that you are describing, the fashion design movement, or where it's moving, is not at all my experience.
Mm-hmm.
My personal experience, the more dressed down and casual and falling apart I get, the more serious my decorating becomes.
Well, I think that is probably true at your end of the decorating world, but I think a lot of other people are, just going through the equivalent of ready to wear in decorating, the equivalent of H&M.
But I think, sure. I think that though, the West Elm, when West Elm got really great looking, and
Mm-hmm.
obviously Pottery Barn and Crate and Barrel started it, and then all these other places, and it's just getting better looking. And I think that is the the result of that is maximalism,
Well, that
because
is,
it's too ubiquitous and it's too affordable that now people have turned away from
well, I mean, that's something I've watched, through my whole career. The half-life of a trend has gone
it. Yeah.
from, a year now. It can go from the best custom bespoke design to a catalog in 6 weeks now because of computers. So
And
that everything is a cliche before, in a very short time now. So I really don't want to sound like a grouch. So you have to stop me because I'm really not a grouch,
no,
and
I know
I
you're not.
really love to see. I really love to see what other people do.
Okay,
What I'm
yeah.
just saying is, it's the things that I really revere, history and collecting, and I love the history of furniture. Um, I love antiques, and I'm sorry to see a lot of it. I don't understand a lot of the new ways it's used, but I'm not supposed to, so that's fine.
And that's not to say that it's over, that you never will. That
I
can
would
be,
never. The world moves on.
yeah.
It's like I really mean it when I say it's someone else's turn to shape it now, and that's one of the things that I do see now that I have a very hard time with is, you know, it's very common for people to say, "Oh, everything goes together. If you love it, buy it. It will go together." I don't really believe that. I think uh, there's a limit to that. I don't think everything goes together, and
Right.
and as because of that, we see a lot of rooms that to me are very chaotic, very focused on details, too many details, and not focused enough on the overall impression of the room, which is really what good design is about. It's what's the emotional temperature of the room. It's not one little thing in a million things winking at you.
Yeah. 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 So,
But
is that,
again, everybody has, every generation has a different, attention span. So people now may need more stimulating rooms, with a lot of detail and a lot of stimulation.
but that's the antithesis of what we're saying when we say it's all very, you know, bland.
Oh, I didn't. Oh, I never said it was bland. I never.
No, I
No,
was,
I don't. No, no, I don't. I don't think things are bland. If anything, I just see le- a, a great freedom, which, depending on your point of view, is either freedom or chaos.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, well, certainly if you think that if people said, oh,
We're being very, high-minded and intellectual here, I think.
is that a problem? Come on. Like half the time I'm talking about my fingernails. Um,
We'll get
but
to that.
I think for designers to say, oh, just get anything, like obviously that just invalidates our entire profession.
Hmm.
Though I do recall India Hicks saying that David would always say, if it's really good and really amazing, you can make it work.
If you're if you're
Beautiful.
David Hicks.
Yeah, totally, for David Hicks. And you happen to have an eagle console and a bucket of plum colored
and
paint.
and
And
four oval portraits
right, totally.
in your apartment at the Albany,
Yeah. So
with
let's talk
18-foot ceilings.
are they 18?
I don't know, but they're pretty high.
Up there.
They're up
Um,
there.
so let's talk about you have these spectacular trips that you go on as as nourishment with friends of yours, and you do it every year. Do you go, well, I mean, probably not recently, but isn't it every year or is it every other year?
Sorry, I lost you for some reason there for a moment. Could you repeat
Um,
that?
the, the trips that you and your friends take
Hmm.
annually, or used to be annually, and then I consider that it's part autodidact, it's part appreciation, now knowing your preservation past. It's clearly part preservation, and it's also just nourishment
Hmm.
for your soul. Can tell us about some of your trips, because your trips are amazing.
Oh, okay. Well, what Alexa is referring to here is uh, many years ago, I went on uh, a, an incredible trip with the John Soane Foundation um, to country houses in England. And a half a dozen of us on the trip liked it so much that we asked the guide if he would put together a trip for us the next year in a different county. Well, we did it for 13 years straight, the seven of us, stopped only by COVID. Um, and every year we go to England the same week, pick a different county, and visit three houses a day for five or 6 days. And I have managed to see hundreds of English country houses. Um,
And I mean, you have photographs of
I
the way.
have photographs that I can never share of them because when we go,
Yes, that's it. Understood that you're not allowed.
well, we're not allowed. A big part of the reason we're not allowed is theft is such a big problem in England. There's so many burglaries in these houses.
I had no
And
idea.
oh, it's a terrible problem, and people burglars steal to order.
Uh,
Um, it's really we have arrived at houses many times, a day after the burglars.
oh no.
It's a terrible problem in the English countryside. So, uh, so they're very cautious about sharing what's in their houses.
Sure. I was talking to Emily Erdman a few
Hmm.
weeks ago,
Oh, I
and
saw it.
she said that um, she'd gone to Madeline Castaing's, or a friend had bought Madeline Castaing's house, and that a bergère had been stolen, which I thought was hilarious because, you know,
It, well, people go on the tours and then they and then they place an order of what they want stolen.
I mean, that's almost like a heist movie. That should be a heist movie. I would watch
Yeah,
that.
except that it's so sad. I mean,
No, no,
it
it's purple.
it's really terrible. They actually have gangs that have used like Caterpillar tractors to break down doors. And
So,
when you stay in we often stay in these houses. You don't want to be the one who sets off the burglar alarm at night. You can't go downstairs.
yeah,
There's a
yeah,
sign, alarm on, alarm off,
yeah.
in the house. So it's actually quite a problem there.
Are you going to resume these trips once we're
We
all
can't
clear?
wait. We can't wait. We will.
I can't for
It
you.
takes a lot of planning. So we've been unable to do one of these trips because everything changes every couple of months. But
I
I'll
think
share my thousands of photographs with you.
yes, I know.
With you. Um,
And this must satiate some part of your editor brain.
oh my God. I mean, I never really. I thought I loved English country houses until I saw so many of them and I really understood them.
Yeah,
We look at them and we see the stuff. We just see, oh, to live with all this fabulous stuff. That's not how they see it. Someone once said to me, every time I open a drawer, I find my great aunt's knickers. Um, you know, these houses are filled with things that need specialized care that could bankrupt anybody. So it is such a responsibility to like keep all the leather-bound books from turning to dust and to get to keep powder post beetles from eating the staircase and not be the person who loses the house after 1,000 years in the family.
right. Uh, we have someone we both know who had a great book collection in New York City, and many of them were in sleeves, and years years later, moving house, they found that books, tons of them were missing. They'd been taken out of their sleeves, inside job, in the building.
Mm-hmm.
First editions of
Wow.
incredible authors, just
Mm-hmm.
great. But
But,
yeah.
but yeah, in these houses, it's unbelievable that what they inherit everything, every slip of paper going back hundreds of years. We went to a house where they'd inherited all of their ancestors' carriages. You know, it's
But
like inheriting a
family
Porsche
is
collection.
living in a private wing, right?
Oh, excuse me?
Are the families mostly living in a private wing, and then
No, not necessarily. Those
because
are, you're thinking of the National Trust houses.
with the robberies, you hope they're not there.
Oh no, they're cased, so they get robbed when they're not there.
Right.
But most of the houses we visit are still in private hands, and some of them open to the public for a few weeks a year for a few hours for tax reasons. But the only case where they live in a wing is when it's a National Trust property, and part of the deal is they get to live in a corner
Right.
of the house.
Like Blenheim.
Like Blenheim. Those are the real showboat houses that no one could afford to keep going.
No. It's so interesting to think about those properties, and then what we're talking about in the modern day. You say, I don't know what's going on. The one is it's almost like an albatross, beautiful albatross, and like all of this history, bogged down by history, and the other one is so unfettered, has no meaning. Like bobbing in
Well,
this.
there's the simple difference is the way the English inherit. In England, the oldest son cops the lot. He inherits everything.
The
And that was
endowment.
and that was done so that it would all stay together. And in the United States, when the parents die, everything is split up among the children and the estate gets split up. But in England, that's how they've kept the houses together, the land together, the furniture with the house. Only one person gets it.
But I don't think that's the simple reason. There are a million reasons why Americans have a different appreciation or relationship with their interiors. We live in buildings, don't have histories that go that far back. Perhaps we haven't had the interest cultivated because we don't have the ossified class system.
Mm-hmm.
It's just that you like it, you think it's beautiful, but you haven't spent years being told how meaningful it is.
Well, here's a story. We were staying in a house, and we were given a little cocktail party, and I was talking to a neighbor at this cocktail party about a house we'd visited that was very renovated. And she said,
trying to figure out what the stand-in is, like what renovated.
It had a new
kitchen. Domestically, clearly.
It had a new kitchen, a big American-style family kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, well, why would you change something if you didn't have to? And I looked at her. This woman was, as I recall, a marquess. I mean, she was, true to her class. And she said, why would you change something if you didn't have to? And I said, well, therein lies the difference between an American and an Englishman. An American feels it's their duty to improve everything, that everything can be taken to the next level, everything can be made better, everything can be made more you. We don't see anything that we're not driven to make better.
But at the same time, I don't assume that she was spending much time in her own kitchen. So for her, it was probably a totally stupid space to have changed.
No. I mean, their lives have changed a lot. They don't have staff. So
of course, but Americans treasure rolling around in their kitchen.
Well, they do too now, because the younger ones want more. They don't want to sit in a dining room at a mahogany table for 22 people.
I do.
I once had I was once given a birthday party in one of these houses, and the party was given in the what they called the state dining room, which had a mahogany table that went on 400 feet. And the centerpiece of the table was a pair of 18th century jeweled dueling pistols.
Wow.
Jeweled silver dueling pistols.
Don't kill the chef.
That is the level of fantasy in these houses.
I feel the siren song of fantasy. I definitely, the longer I'm in this world of design, and I don't know if it's a good or a bad thing, but I'm feeling the siren song.
The siren song for
fantasy of indulging in, like, dueling pistols at the dinner table.
They make a great centerpiece if you happen to have silver jeweled dueling pistols.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. It's also could be, you spend a lot of time believing in things being appropriate. Sometimes you need a break and you go in the opposite direction. I don't know.
Well, it's the old pendulum. I've seen it swing so many times. I mean, I've been through, Golden Oak, Joe D'Urso, Zona, English country, Italian country, French country, Christian Liagra, Barbara Barry, Axel Vervoort.
So that's
and every one of these things in its moment, people thought was timeless and would last forever.
Yeah. Well, they thought Christian Liagra would last forever because they thought it was Jean-Michel Franck, which will last forever.
Which will last forever.
Will last forever. And then, yeah, they all have like they're receiving. I mean, I think Vervoortian design has legs.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's forever. I don't know what I think about it having reached the Kardashians. But if anything, I like them better.
Well, this is one of the interesting things about doing that book with Jennifer Bowles, because we really did think about which rooms still look good and which rooms look dated. And pretty much everything eventually looks dated. John Fowler said 50 years is the limit in decorating. Everything looks like it's time. English country decorating that was done in the 50s looks like the 1950s. And English country decorating that was done in the 1980s looks like the 1980s.
Nancy Lancaster is, I think, eternal.
She's pretty eternal. She is eternal. I would agree with that.
I think if you look at Swedish interiors of the Swedish idiom,
mm-hmm.
I think they're eternal. Maybe they're eternal because they're a region. Like, it's such a regional thought.
Mm-hmm. I was looking at, there's a room in Inspired Design by Ruby Ross Wood in Palm Beach. That room could be done, if it were done tomorrow, it would be as chic as it was when she did it in 1930.
I think that my father had a black and white watercolor in his book on legendary decorators. And to see the photograph of it with the color was like, so exciting. That's one of the things about that book, that, again, anybody who watches this video, you must get this book, it is our history. This is a history of a not just of a profession, but of a deep interest of humans, where we live, how we live. This is important.
Well, Jennifer Bowles is, from the first time I met her, thank you for the introduction. You can mention a room and she will say, oh my gosh, April 1956, House Beautiful. I mean, she is like the Rain Man of decorating. And the depth of her knowledge is so extraordinary.
And not just her ability to reference, but to understand.
and to understand, to make connections. It's really extraordinary, and I learned so much doing this book with her. And of course, it's a list, and a list of 100 people, and any list is going to be debatable.
Sure.
But that's one of the challenges you take on when you do a list. You just have to have the courage to do it. I couldn't have done this when I was working. I
Definitely
couldn't
not.
have. I couldn't have risked hurting anybody's feelings or offending anyone. But I could only have done this after I stopped being a magazine editor.
If one ever stops, you're just not publishing.
Exactly. You- I was born editing.
So
I edit my laundry.
what are you doing over here? You could
No,
be.
editing is like really a state of mind. I was talking to someone who saw my comment about how my aquarium could have been an architectural digest when I was a kid. And we were talking about it, how we used to edit our fish. And,
Like,
you
compose the tribe.
well, I mean, it was, oh, I need one of these. We were accessorizing with fish.
Yeah.
And it's really true. It was an editing job even then.
Inspired design, the 100.
Most important interior designers of the past 100 years by Jennifer Bowles.
By Jennifer Bowles, Vendome Press.
London Press, fourth printing just hit Amazon.
Yay. What was I going to ask you? What are you working on now? You said you
Oh,
work.
I'm working on two books, and I can't really say, but one I don't usually do monographs, but one is going to be with a designer, and the other I'm not really at liberty to say yet, but it's going to be a book with Newell Turner,
Love me some Newell Turner.
and it's going to be a real surprise, people.
Uh, I think just the fact that the two of you are teaming up is
I only work with people who are totally fun to work with. So
good rule to have. Um, okay, so if you can't tell us about the two you're working on, what are some you like to do?
some of my
What would you like to do?
oh
Like further down the runway.
actually this is enough work for me right now. I can't wait to get back to traveling, and I have this house out in the California desert, and I'm very involved with
That
that.
was the other book you did.
Well, Sunnylands, yes, the closest we have to an American country house. Like, it's the American Chatsworth. Have you ever been to Sunnylands?
I have not.
Okay, I would love to
But I
take you
have been to
there.
Springs. I had a job there.
Hmm.
And I get the appeal for sure.
Well, Sunnylands is the only extant William Haynes design, top to bottom. It's unbelievable. Only a house with an endowment like this could keep it going. And it is like a time machine. It's extraordinary. So, but I live in a community called Marrakesh, which was designed by an architect named John Wolfe,
Uh-huh.
who, who designed, among other things, the famous Bob Evans house, the one in The Kid Stays in the Picture,
Yeah.
that he lived in for 50 years.
The
And he was
fireplace flanked by two huge openings.
exactly. And my whole community was designed by him, and it's 360 pink stucco Hollywood Regency houses. And we are in the process of redoing our clubhouse. Tom Shearer is redoing it. So I'm very, very involved in all of this.
And does Tom Shearer have a place there?
He doesn't, but he's sort of fallen in love with it.
He's got a place in the other Marrakesh.
He's got so many places. He does not need another one.
Yeah.
He has houses in places where we didn't even know there were places.
Okay. But that would also fall under the heading of don't shit where you eat.
I prefer to say foul the nest.
Foul the desk?
Foul the nest.
Oh, the nest. Oh my God, that's so great. So yeah, when I've been asked to do the lobby in my building years ago, I was like, mm-mm.
Oh no. Well, actually, what it came down to was I just decided I couldn't live with anybody else making this decision, and I was just going to fall on my sword and make sure this was done right. And
that in its way is the stewardship that you were talking about needing to keep places aloft.
well, I decided I didn't care who liked me or disliked me. I wanted this place done correctly, and it needed someone with the light touch of a Tom Shearer, and someone he was particularly important because he has a lot of experience doing clubs,
Yeah,
and doing a club,
but reinventing them.
right. And doing a club is not like doing a hot restaurant. You know, it's a very different mindset, and you have to understand it, and he does. So it's been a very happy experience.
I am, after having grown up going to Lyford every spring break with my
Hmm.
family, some of it at some point. I'm sure he did. When Tom Shearer's I can't even call it redecorating, his recreation of the Lyford Key Club, that room arrived as a classic.
When Senga Mortimer brought me photos of Lyford the first time at Town and Country and put them on my desk, I just looked at her and said, "This room is going to be remembered."
I mean,
That's the
forever.
highest compliment.
Yeah,
This that
it,
I hadn't said that in years,
yeah,
um, and it
it's
will be.
an instant classic. My
So,
never, and also like hats off to Lyford Key for getting it and letting him do his thing.
and you know how easy it is to get a group of people to agree on taste. You know,
Yeah,
actually,
not at all.
if we have 1 minute, here's an interesting story that came out of this. That is a question
Out
for interior design. Question for interior at America. A question for interior designers to think about for the future. Tom, when he did his original mood boards, uh, showed a floral wallpaper in the women's locker room and a geometric paper in the men's locker room. And I had several comments about um, gender, about
Stereotype.
gender stereotyping in the bathrooms, and that women didn't need flowers. And we had, well, and it made me think about how masculine and feminine are the two most basic descriptors of decorating. And in a few years, we're not going to be using them,
Um,
or using them very judiciously, because they can cause offense amazingly. And I tried to explain my way out of this by saying to people, you know, a floral is not necessarily feminine. You know, you associate it with that, but William Morris was not feminine.
yeah,
It's how it's used.
I have to think about this more, but I don't think that feminine and masculine, as long as you don't, I think you can use those descriptors as long as you don't assign them to a gender.
Mm-hmm.
Like
Well,
you could be a feminine man, or you could be a feminine they,
mm-hmm.
or you could be a masculine her. Um, I feel like, but I mean, you're very possibly right, but I hope not, because they are descriptive.
Well,
They carry meaning with them, which is why it's so hard for people to be slapped with them if they don't want to own it. But as adjectives for decoration, I'm okay with them.
well, this is a story that's unfolding, and it's one of the things about decorating today that I love, you know, that it does evolve. And I think it's going to be very, you know, people are sensitized to these words, a generation is sensitized, and that will change things. And I can't predict it. And I think it's fun to go along for the ride and see what happens and see the world you're living in.
Yeah. I couldn't sleep last night, and I was just thinking about rooms and rooms I was decorating in my sleep, and I was thinking, it hadn't occurred to me that master bedroom was an offensive term to anybody, or to anybody. And like so many things in the past 2 years, if you have white privilege, if you're clueless, and you've never had to think about any of these things, there have been a lot of rude awakenings. And I was thinking, like, hey, I just want to jump into hero's bedroom, the hero of this house, of this story, and it needn't be masculine or feminine, but like our protagonist, our hero.
I live with a real estate broker, so I am well aware of all this stuff. I hear about it, and it's very real out there.
Before I heard about master bedroom, I heard that you weren't allowed to describe a bathroom as his and hers. And I just was like, and ARC 22 ARC. I say main bedroom, so I can still say MBR because I like walk around our house saying to the kids, take that to the MBR, take that to the GBR, because I'm just used to labeling.
Also, family room.
What's wrong with family room?
It implies that the house is only suitable for a certain kind of person, a certain kind of arrangement.
So Alan Tanksley has a lovely phrase that he uses. He says he's got his biological family and his logical family. I think you can have, which I love, isn't that great? I think you can have a family without having any ceremonial ties.
Oh, I'm not going to argue. I'm only reporting here because this is the old New York Times journalist in me. I think this is really interesting. You asked if I'm still an editor. There are stories around that I see all the time. I think this masculine-feminine story is a really interesting one. I would love to write a story about the demise of the living room as a civilizing force in the American house and how it's really changing how people behave.
That's the power of interior design, the psychological effects that it has on you when you walk into a place and it's decorated a certain way and how you behave because it's imposing itself on you.
Well, the living room was where a child learned boundaries. And now that living rooms have morphed into open kitchen family dining room situations.
Well, not everywhere.
Not everywhere, but the people who don't live in 5,000 square foot houses live in much more open arrangements now. So, and the idea of a formal living room.
That your child is not exsanguinating, hasn't stabbed himself on the coffee table. Or, I mean, like, if you don't have staff, I mean, of course, you need to mind your people.
Well, for example, I lived for several years in a Park Slope, in a wonderful pre-war building. And I was on the co-op board, and every apartment that changed hands, the walls were knocked out between the living room, the kitchen, and the dining room, and made into one big space. And I thought, wow, this is going to really change behavior.
But COVID has stopped that.
No, I know. I know you're right. People have rediscovered privacy.
Yeah. And then I feel like acoustics are very under-considered when doing modern design. People don't think about, if you're stepping on a marble floor all the time and there are no walls and the staircase goes upstairs and you got your 400-foot TV, how to stop sound?
Well, a good time to remind people, beware the seductive photograph. Always think about
one sense.
Always think about function.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I obviously could talk to you forever. I think I'm clear.
Please come visit me in California.
I would love. Oh, when are you going to? Are you there right now? No.
No, I'm not. But I'll be there in all winter. And
would you really let me come visit you?
Oh my God, I would love it. I would love to give you the grand architectural tour of the California desert.
I'm totally in. Because I haven't done that. I've worked there, but I have not carved out the time because, I go back and forth real quick.
I'll show you the good stuff. It doesn't take long. It doesn't take long. You could do it in a day or two, but I will show you the good stuff.
I'm in.
Deal.
Thank you so much. I can't wait to see your new projects, the new books. When's the first one coming?
Oh, it's going to be a while. Not until 2023.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I love you to bits.
Oh, you're the best.
Thank you more than I love purple. And I
Thank you
love
so much
purple.
for inviting me to do this. I love this series, and I've wanted to do it for so long. So,
Golly.
yeah.
That's long overdue. Love you. What?
Bye.